Welcome back. President Trump using his diplomatic relationships to ensure peace and safety, now securing the release of an American citizen who's been trapped in Saudi Arabia for the past 4 years. 75-year-old Saad al-Mahdi was jailed back in 2021. He was charged with quote-unquote terrorism for criticizing the Saudi royal family online. His release coming just 1 day after the president met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House. The dealmaker-in-chief securing a boosted $1 trillion of investment from the Crown Prince into America. President Trump also touted even more deals to come at the U.S.-Saudi Investment Forum, where I was this week. Saudi Arabia also considering joining the Abraham Accords, the president told me. Watch this.
We want to be part of the Abraham Accord, but we want also to be sure that we secure a clear path of two-state solution. And today we have a healthy discussion with Mr. President that we're going to work on that to be sure that we can prepare the right situation as soon as possible to have that.
I think we're, I don't want to use the word commitment, but we've had a very good talk on the Abraham Accords. We talked about one state, two state. We talked about a lot of things in a short period of time. We'll be discussing it further, too. But I think you have a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords.
Joining me now is former State Department Senior Advisor and Center for the National Interest Senior Fellow, Christian Whiton. Christian, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Your reaction?
Well, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, if Saudi were to join the Abraham Accord, that would mean diplomatic relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia right in the wake of this war that, of course, was started by the Palestinians, started by Hamas, but finished by Israel. So that would be a big deal. There's also one other thing, in addition to what you mentioned, the nuclear deal regarding to nuclear energy in a so-called 1-2-3 agreement. The U.S. has one with the United Arab Emirates. Saudi wants one. Saudi is smart enough to realize it should actually use nuclear power to power its own country so it can save the oil for export. So really just a lot of progress and a total 180 from the Biden administration that mistakenly thought it could and should isolate Saudi Arabia, make it a pariah. That was until gasoline elevated to $4.75 a gallon and Biden had to go to Riyadh hat in hand and beg the Saudis to produce more oil. Big change.
Yeah, for sure. And President Trump is also working with the Saudis to secure peace in Sudan. This was a priority for the Crown Prince, and the president noted that the violence in Sudan is increasing against Christians. Watch this.
His Majesty would like me to do something very powerful having to do with Sudan. It was not on my my charts to be involved in that. I thought it was just something that was crazy and out of control. But I just see how important that is to you and to a lot of your friends in the room. Sudan, and we're going to start working in Sudan. And it's horrible what's happening. And I viewed it as being just sort of a freelance, no government, no this, no that. And he explained the whole culture and the whole history. And it was very interesting to hear. Really amazing, actually, to hear. And, we've already started working on that.
Well, there's an obvious strengthening relationship between the U.S. and the Saudis right now, Christian. Your thoughts on Sudan, or what else these two can do together to forward progress?
Sudan is a little tricky. The Saudis and the Egyptians have been on the side of the Sudanese armed forces. That's opposed to the rapid support forces. There's some who believe that the rapid support forces that are supported, for example, by the UAE are less inclined to involve the Muslim Brotherhood in a government. There's also an agreement, an argument that this dispute is mostly about economics, about gold exports, things like that. But regardless, what we see is President Trump placing himself, we saw it here in Sudan, but also in Nigeria recently, as really the only person who's a major world leader willing to support beleaguered Christians who are under the assault of jihadists. Certainly that is the case in Nigeria, and now it appears to be the case here. So this is a watershed for the presidency. You don't see the Europeans or the Pope stepping up for Christians who are under attack. And that Trump is willing to do this, I think, is quite an important evolution of the presidency.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky expected to speak with the president in the coming days over this proposal for a 28-point peace plan to end the war on Ukraine. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on the issue. Watch.
President Trump has made it very clear since day one and even on the campaign trail that he wants to see this war come to an end. He's grown increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war, Russia and Ukraine alike, for their refusal to commit to a peace agreement. But nevertheless, the president and his national security team are steadfast in seeing this war come to an end, to end the killing and deliver on the president's promise. Special Envoy Witkoff, Marco Rubio, have been working on a plan quietly for about the last month. They've been engaging with both sides, Russia and Ukraine, equally to understand what these countries would commit to in order to see a lasting and durable peace. The president supports this plan. It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done.
Your thoughts, Christian?
Well, the details are a little bit elusive, but this is also a big change. So far, the president has been inclined a bit toward Ukraine in this, not a neutral party. No one really wants to force Ukraine to accept a bunch of territorial concessions to Russia, but that probably, in reality, is what they're going to have to do. And also, they're going to have some Austrian-like neutrality. One of the reasons Russia went to war in the first place, because it didn't want Ukraine joining NATO. You know, making war is ugly. Sometimes making peace is even uglier unless you have one side willing to unconditionally surrender, which just isn't the case in this almost stalemated situation. Ukraine actually slowly losing the war. So not a pretty outcome, but one that probably does move us closer to peace.
Well, look, the Wall Street Journal headlines their story on this morning this way: Trump peace plan demands major concessions from Ukraine. Exactly what you just said. But look, I got to move on to China with you, Christian, because the DOJ arrested 3 Chinese nationals and 1 U.S. citizen for smuggling NVIDIA and HP chips to China. The DOJ says that they set up a shell company to send the chips to Malaysia and Thailand, meant to end up in Beijing. This is China's M.O. I mean, you know, I wrote an entire book about this, The Cost, where I detailed how China had set up offices for Motorola. And the woman who was arrested at Motorola was caught at the airport. She had pockets full of hardware from Motorola. They were smuggling this back to China. What do you make of these charges against 3 Chinese nationals and 1 American to smuggle AI chips to China?
Yeah, it just shows that regardless of what the Chinese say, if they say they're behaving better, they're not behaving better. They're engaged in full-scale economic and technological warfare against us. You know, there's a debate within the administration about how tough to be on export controls. When MBS came to the White House, there was not a full state dinner, but a big White House dinner. I think I may have seen you on the invitation list. But a lot of people from tech there, people like Mark Benioff, big-time Democrats. The president and his team are leaning a little bit more toward deregulating some of these export regulations regarding ICs to China. There are people who want it toughened up. You know, I just think we have to realize that China is an adversary. They are after us, and we need to actually lean the other way towards much tighter, much tougher export controls. And as for these people, yes, it's nice that these ones were caught and indicted, but maybe it's best that Chinese nationals should not be working anywhere in technology, certainly not in integrated circuits, certainly not in AI in the United States. Those people need to be sent home, whether they're at a university or working in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, no, you're right. The dinner was jam-packed with executives from the tech field. The CEO of NVIDIA was there. AMD was there. Palantir CEO was there. It was certainly a big presence trying to get behind President Trump in his efforts. Christian, great to see you this morning. Thank you, sir. Christian Whiton joining us on all of that. Stay with us. We'll be right back.